Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Thank you for joining me for another episode. Once again, we are diving into the Her series. And this episode, we are looking at living without her. So, if you have been following the Her series, I have been going along explaining, obviously, our journey and how the secret burden came about, and how my story really unfolded when I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa at 14. And of course, within these episodes, her is referred to as my anorexia diagnosis. And in these episodes, we have unveiled a lot in terms of diving into eating disorders as a whole, and specifically how I turned to my eating disorder in order to cope in my life and how I let it in. It has been quite healing for myself, really sitting in parts of my story and understanding the who, the where, the how, the why. And these newer episodes that are starting to come out, that I'm starting to record, are quite interesting as well, because it's really reflective on what actually helped me. A lot of the time we have people come to us at the secret burden and say, but how did you not relapse? How did you not go through it? How did you not, be experiencing this for such a long period? And when I say a long period, I mean, I still went through recovery, which was probably about 7 to 8 years. But some people deal with this for 20 plus years and are never able to get over it. And upon reflection, I've learnt a lot about how structure plays such a pivotal role, how having a support network plays such a crucial role, and how trusting the process and not knowing why, not knowing when, and focusing on the simple things like your treatment plan and dealing with the rest later really helps. So in this episode of Living Without Her, last episode I discussed that I was going to do a part 2 of recovering from her, and I am. And I think this is where these two are going to morph in together, because I really want to touch on the tools that can really help people recover, that helped me in my journey overcoming my eating disorder, as well as the physical effects, because we talk a lot about mental health recovery from our eating disorder, where we've got to get our mind right, we've got to make the decision, we've got to take accountability. And I touched on that a lot in the last episode, but there is also a lot of physical trauma that comes when you are recovering from an eating disorder, because especially I think with anorexia, but when you have underfueled for such a long period of time and you have to put on an immense amount of weight, there is a lot of discomfort in the body. And I feel, in my experience, it was really hard to choose recovery when I was feeling that discomfort physically as well as mentally, but physically it became quite painful. Kind of rippled throughout my life. Whenever I felt discomfort, I wanted to run and I didn't want to sit in it, and I couldn't trust the process, and I just wanted to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling within me. And I think a lot of us do that, not only physically but mentally. So we're going to tap into that today as well. So thank you, as I said, for joining us for another episode of the Her series. I did want to touch on firstly why someone may resent people that are trying to tell someone to recover or trying to help someone recover, and why there might be a barrier there. Often people in the outskirts witnessing someone going through an eating disorder think, just eat. It's that simple. Just put the food in your mouth, eat it, or choose recovery. It's hard to understand why someone would not want to choose recovery. And I think it's really important to note what may be a reason. And for me, this was a big reason. It was because my eating disorder was filling a void. So in my life, I felt very empty. I felt like I didn't have love. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I didn't feel like I was good enough. So I felt this empty, almost pocket in the pit of my stomach. And Walt's walking in, comes in, anorexia nervosa, and says, I'm going to fill that for you. I'm going to give you those feelings of validation. I'm going to make you feel seen. I'm going to make you feel heard. I'm going to make you feel loved. And I'm going to give you purpose. It's going to make you feel motivated, you're going to feel driven, and you're going to feel like you have some sense of worth in this world. And that's what was sold to me. And obviously not in the way where I at least saw some figure come to me and sell that to me. But if you look at that from an outside view, that is how an eating disorder is sold to someone that feels like something is lacking in their life. And for me, I was empty. I wanted something. I wanted someone to see me, to hear me, to make me feel loved, and to make me feel like I wasn't this invisible figure to my outside world. So my eating disorder came and gave me a solution to fill that void. So I took it. She became my best friend. She became the best friend I didn't have. She became the mother that I thought I wanted. She became the sibling that I thought I needed. She became my network, my person, and she gave me that sense of connection and community, and we all long that. I don't care who you are, it's innate in us as humans to want that community, to want that connection, to want that love from something or someone. And although she wasn't a physical person, she gave me that. And she gave me that purpose and that drive because I felt like I had nothing. I felt like I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I brought to this world. And she said, I can give you that. I can give you that drive and motivation and purpose. And purpose drives a lot of us. It's what motivates a lot of us to get up in the morning, whether that's getting up and having that responsibility to go to work, or that responsibility to look after children, or that responsibility to be caring for someone. It's really hard to keep turning up for yourself. And I think I've struggled that a lot with that being single my whole life, because you constantly have to turn up for yourself. And yes, I have an amazing family that are there for me and that can support me and love me, and they do. But I think underneath all the layers, we all just want someone to choose us, for us to be someone's first choice. And she gave me that. She gave me that, and she gave me that reason to get up each day and have something to work towards, whilst having someone in my corner without conditions that I was aware of. So I fell for her. I fell for her, and not the romantic or any realistic way, but I fell for the mental health condition because I needed it in order to survive. And honestly, if I didn't have her come fill my void, I don't know if I would have been here today. And so why do people get stuck in this quasi recovery? Because you think about it. This thing, this person, this idea, this mental health condition, whatever you want to put to it, comes into their life and fills that void. It has sheltered them. It has given them love. It has given them validation for so long, purpose, drive, that then you come in and say that needs to go. Of course, they're going to fight that. They are going to fight that for as long as they can, as hard as they can. Because if you take that away from them, in their head, what do they have left? They go back to feeling empty. And they know what that feels like. They know how the emptiness makes them feel unworthy, unlovable, no drive, no motivation. And they think that's a darker place. So they're going to fight that. And they're not going to choose recovery unless you find a way to prove to them that they can bring something, that there is a purpose, that they can be motivated about other things. You have to find a way to switch the focus. And whether you're someone going through it or someone supporting someone going through it, you have to find another purpose, another drive, another motivation, so you are not relying on her to fill your void. Because she will fill it, and she'll fill it well. She'll fill it for as long as you can, but it's not in a great way. It's in a way that is going to make you sick. But you ask why someone wouldn't choose recovery, and there is your reason. There was my reason. Because I knew what those dark places were without her. I didn't want to go back there. I knew in those dark places I was contemplating my life nearly every night. And I knew in those places I was waking up and not wanting to be here. I knew in those places I felt invisible, I felt unworthy, I felt unheard. And so take her away, I was going to have nothing. I felt like I was going to have nothing. Recovery was coming out of that and figuring out, all right, who am I? What do I bring? What do I want to bring? Who do I want to be? Because before that, the reason I had that void is because I was being someone else that I thought society wanted me to be. I thought my family wanted me to be. I was so desperate for love that I was morphing myself into somebody else. Where this was my time to not have that void, to let go of her, to recover from her without a void, and to truly step into the person that I wanted to be. For a long time, I did fight that because I thought that I didn't have anything. I didn't have the answer. And a lot of the time we don't. But this is where recovery, you have to take the risk. You have to try. You have to get out there and just try different things and discover who you are, what you like and what you don't like. And that means you have to get uncomfortable. You have to do things that you never thought you would be able to do, or try things that you never thought you would like. But you never know the people that you will meet, the path that you may be on, or the interests that you may find. And once I started taking those mini risks and getting uncomfortable, I started to get to know who I wanted to be. And once I started putting myself on that path, I never wanted to go back. Because the feelings that I was feeling, I was no longer desperately searching to fill that void or turning to her in order to fill that void, because I didn't have it. I was being truly aligned with myself. And I had people that made me started attracting people that made me feel worthy and seen and heard. I started to feel that within myself because I was truly aligning with myself. But you have to take the risk. Staying where you are is only going to make you want her more, is only going to make you want to fill that void even more. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to feel unsafe and insecure in a way where you are breaking your own comfort zones. And that means challenging yourself and challenging her. And no one can do that but you. No one can do that but the person going through it. And yes, you can have support teams that encourage you and suggest things, but you have to be the one that takes action. And when I decided to take action, it did take me a little while. People were telling me for a really long time. But when I decided to take action, as I said, I did not look back. And why I didn't relapse, because I just kept finding proof that I didn't need to fill that void anymore. And it was still hard. I'm not saying that jumping all in and changing the path was easy by all means. It was still so challenging, and I still days woke up and did not want to do it. And I felt like I was right back to the start some days and couldn't even finish a meal some days. But I just kept turning up. I kept turning up because I believed that one day it just could be better. And I believed in the idea that good was coming if I just gave it a chance. And I'm so glad I gave it a chance, because otherwise I would not be here today and truly living the life that I've decided to lead myself. So going through recovery is challenging for the person going through it as well as the support team. Everybody is affected by the person going through by the eating disorder. And that's not to say that one experience is worse than the other. It's hard. And you constantly feel like it's on you every day to make a decision to turn up. And some days you just don't want to. It's exhausting. But there's some really helpful things that I think can help you get through that. One, obviously, I touched on is finding a support network that really helps and is there for you. People that you resonate with. At the start, I went through 3 or 4 psychologists before I found one that I could talk to, because there's no point in going to a medical team, a psychologist, a psychiatrist that you're not going to open up to. It's not only wasting your time, but it's wasting their time. And if you really want to recover, if you really want to make it work, you need a good team around you and you need people that you can trust. we kept searching until I found someone that I just felt I could open up to. And for me, weirdly, it was their voice. And it could be something different from for you. It might be the way that they interact, it might be the way they greet, it might be the space or the environment that you're in. I like to feel safe and heard in my sessions, and for some reason that comes to me with someone's tone of voice. As I mentioned, I went through three or four psychologists before I found the right voice for me. And I'm so glad that I found the psychologist that I did at the time, because she was phenomenal in the way that she supported me with overcoming the triggers that I was dealing with each and every day. And things would pop up every week, different things. I mean, life is life. No one can say that they go through a week and that there isn't something that pops up that triggers us and that makes us emotional or makes us angry or sad or sends us backwards. We just have to find ways in order to deal with that. And I think sometimes it's hard to put that all on one person to just find a way. And that's why we have our support network, so we can collaborate and we can talk about it and find ways and experiences that other people have found effective and just try it ourselves and see if it works. In terms of helping myself when I was initially, so I'd get into like these really high anxiety states, especially around food and challenges that would come up where I'd have to go out and socially eat or meet people. My anxiety was just through the roof through everything. And there were certain things that we used initially when I was in the height of my anxiety. And I always say to people, when you're in the height of it, there's no point in trying to implement practices that should be implemented prior. So things like breathing, meditation, breath work, grounding. For me, it did not work when I was in the height of my anxiety. Those things I had to implement as daily practices to calm myself so that I wouldn't reach my anxiety peak as hard, as intense, and as often. So my daily practices were always meditation, grounding, mindfulness, having really calming influences in my life so that when the intense moments did come, I could implement practices in a more calmer state. And honestly, that works. I did a 40-day challenge once on my own going through recovery. No one asked me to do it. I'm an experimenter and I love to experiment and trial things and research things and myself be the subject. And so I experimented with this breath work. I committed to 40 days of doing 40 minutes a day. And so many people do 120 minutes a day, but for me, it was really hard to sit still for even 5 minutes. Very hyperactive person, perfectionist. If I'm sitting down, if I'm relaxing, I'm not doing anything, I'm not being productive. So for me, 40 minutes was a lot. It was a lot when I started to go back to work and I was working full time at the time. I was also studying full time. So ideally, I did not have the time, but I made a commitment to myself. And when I set goals and I commit, I tell myself, no matter what, you make it happen. And so I made it happen. And sometimes I would be doing my 40-minute breath works in the backseat of my car, lying down just before I was about to go in. I was doing support work at the time. And just before I was about to go in and take care of the family that I was looking after at the time, I just made it work because I make those commitments to myself. When I have a goal, I just have that personality that I just make it happen and I find a way. And so I did this challenge for 40 days and I just realized immense results. And how I measured that, weirdly, was road rage. I used to just instantly get angry or instantly snap or just react to things or get really defensive when people drop comments. And I found myself just not getting as angry in certain circumstances. Like if someone would overtake me quickly or didn't have their blinker on while I was driving, it just didn't even faze me. Or when someone would make a comment about something and I thought I'd had to jump on the defense and defend myself, I didn't. I was able to breathe myself through moments and the emotion didn't take control of me. I had control of my emotions. And so those 40 days turned into almost a year. I kept going. And, some days, the 40 days, I definitely did every single day for 40 days. But post that, I committed to doing some every day. But weekends, I probably didn't do it as often. But I tried to commit to at least 20 minutes a day. And even to this day, I still have a 20-minute meditation practice that I implement as much as I can, because I know the effects help me so much in the way that I turn up for myself and the people around me. I hate being that person that's reactive or defensive. And I know for me, what worked was that breath work. And it was as simple as listening to YouTube videos, because I'm a person, I like to listen to someone. And as I said, I love having someone's voice that I resonate with. So I searched around till I found a voice that resonated with me. And then I listened to this one lady for those 40 days, and I still listen to her today. So that was really helpful in me taking ownership of how I was going to manage my anxiety moving forward. Because as I've mentioned, you don't, especially if you went through an eating disorder and your family or a support team were heavily involved in your treatment and in feeding you and looking after you, you almost become like a kid again, dependent on the people around you to keep you alive. But at some stage, you have to take ownership, you have to take control, and you have to go out and live your life, which means you have to manage your eating disorder. You have to manage your personality. You have to manage your triggers, your traits. And if I was going to do that successfully, I had to find ways that worked for me. And so as I said, I used myself as an experiment and I tried things. And the breath work really helped for me, as I said, as like a stabilizer for my day to day. When I felt something would trigger me quite drastically and I was straight to the height or the wave or the peak of my anxiety, for me, it had to be instant physical wake ups, like alerts. So it was things like jumping in a cold shower or in a cold pool or a cold plunge, whatever that is, like shocking my body back into myself. Because when my anxiety came over me almost, my lid would flip. So all my rational thoughts, all my rational being, I was no longer in my body. I was fully taken over by my anxiety. So being in the heat and at the peak, I had to find a way to get myself back into my body, to bring my mind back to the host of me so I could make rational decisions. And that was like shock therapy. When I was going through it with my family still by my side, mum would do things like wrap me in a blanket and keep me warm. So it was a lot of temperature sort of control, touching the body, so hugging the body and just holding me tight, wrapped in a blanket, holding me tight. And there is some research around that can help people in those moments, because it's like you're back in the womb, you're back being cared by your mum and you've got that warmth. But there's other things, as I said, when I was on my own, it's like jumping in a cold shower, going for a swim. Other things in the heat of the moment, there was ice cubes that I used to put into my hands, because sometimes I would get in a state where I just wanted to like scratch myself free. Literally felt itchy to the point where I wanted to scratch myself out of my body. And I knew in that state I had to change it. I had to change my state. And it had to be instant. So I do things like that brought me instantly back in it. I would do scream therapy. Pillows became my best friend, just screaming into the pillow until I lost my voice, or going into a room that was silent and just screaming as loud as I could, or lying on the base of my bedroom floor, wherever I was. And what I did was, and they do a breathing practice like this, but you squeeze so tightly. So everything in your body, from your toes all the way up to your eyelids, to everything, knuckles, fingers, bum muscles, stomach muscles, everything. You hold, and you're like squeezing so tightly. And I used to do it for 3 counts. It's sometimes pushed to 5. And on the 5th one, I'd just release it all. And I'd let myself fully release. And I'd envision myself releasing. And as I was releasing, all that energy was being pushed to the ground beneath me. A lot of the time I would do this in the grass, because I'm very much a nature person. I'm earthly. If people say, they have water or they like fire or whatever thing, I'm an earth person. So often I'd find myself like lying on the grass and just in my clothes. Who cares about green ants or anything? At that stage, you do not care. And I just squeeze and hold for those 3, and then hold the last one for like an extra 3. Just make sure I get all my tightness out, and then a big release, and just close my eyes and imagine all that energy going into the ground beneath me, like the earth was sucking away all my anxiety. And I just do that until I just felt relief. And sometimes these things, it's important to note that don't heal you, but they just make you feel that little bit better. They get you out of that intensity of it, because when panic sets in, when you go through an anxiety attack, it can be so overwhelming. You can feel so out of control, so out of your body, and not knowing what to do, that I think it's really important, once I established sort of a toolkit of what I needed to go to have something, and to have something prepared beforehand. Because when you're in it and you don't know what to do and you feel lost and it's scary, it's really scary. You feel like you're going to die because your body is reacting and acting in ways that you can't control. You can't just breathe. You can't just snap out of it. So it's really important to have a team around you that understand as well, if this was to pop up, what they can do without you having to say anything, because in that moment, you're not going to be able to say anything. Trust me, you're not going to be like, hey, I'm having an anxiety attack, I need help. You need to know within yourself, be accountable. If you feel it coming on or you feel that you're there, straight away turn to something on that toolkit that's going to help you. Or if someone else starts witnessing something, they need to have that toolkit as well to know how to help you, because it is so scary. Normally, after those things happen, I will do something too, because it takes so much energy and you feel so depleted and so drained. And sometimes, in instances for myself, I felt a lot of shame around it, because obviously mental health is difficult, and to feel like that you struggled or you were triggered by something or vulnerable, it's shameful. You don't want to feel like that you're beneath anyone for being reactive or reacting in such a way after something that might be minimal to someone else. So I do something for myself. A lot of the time I would run a bath. I'd run a bath, have no music on, or I'd put on like sound bowl music and I'd just float in the water, or I'd go to the beach and have a swim and just wash it all off. Or I'd go for a small walk amongst the trees, no earphones, and just listen to the breeze. I'd go watch a sunset or a sunrise and ground myself. But I think it's important to listen to what you need, not what she needs, not what other people think you need, but listen to what you think you need. If you need to color in, color in. If you need to draw, draw. As I said, if you need to go out into nature, go out into nature. Do what you need to do. It's really important to do that, because often in my journey, I started to do things that other people said were helpful, and comes from obviously a great place, but it only made things worse because you're falling further in unalignment with yourself. And what you need in those extreme and intense moments is something that's going to help you. And the only way you're going to find that is if you try things. And that's why it is good to get recommendations and to do things and just see what works. And trust me, like one day for me, a cold shower was going to work, and the next day it was not going to work. So that's why I said you need a list, because you work your way through the list until something works. If you have one thing and it doesn't work and then you just give up, that it's not helpful. You need to have multiple things on that list. And if you're caring for someone with an eating disorder or someone that is just going through a mental health difficulty, sit with them and don't tell them what's on that list, but come up together with something that could work and then just trial it. See what happens. But plan it and have your list before you get to that moment, because there is no point having that list or creating it in the moment when that person is not going to be able to talk, they're not going to be able to reason, and they're not going to be able to make decisions for themselves. So it's important to have practices in place prior to things that do occur. We then fall into, with eating disorder, there is obviously a lot of physical changes that do occur. In my instance, going through anorexia nervosa, I had to put on weight, and I had to put on not just your average 5 kilos. I had to put on 30 kilos, and that's a lot. I mean, we say, oh my gosh, to people that say they've lost 30 kilos, but having to put on 30 kilos is another conversation that we don't have, and it's quite difficult for someone that has a mental health illness, because there is that barrier there that they don't want to become a certain size, and I'm often ridiculed for saying it, but fat, ultimately, that was my fear. That was my fear of becoming fat. And we really don't like saying that word. As I said, I'm brought up that many times in talks and on podcasts. I can't use the word fat, but I think the more that we talk about it and open it in conversation, that sometimes we do fear it, we can learn to get over it. But anyway, fat. It scared me. It scared me because of her. She implemented that into me, that if I was to become fat, nobody was going to accept me, to love me, and I was going to go right back to that empty void feeling. But in gaining weight, there is much physical discomfort. A lot of the time it gets dismissed. I even remember going through hospital and coming out and people just thinking, just, it's fine, get over it. It's your treatment. It's just the process. But not many people understand, obviously, unless you've gone through it, the physical discomfort. I mean, we look at it, as I said, you're putting on an immense amount of weight, but also your systems had shut down. So my digestive system had shut down and my stomach had gone quite small. And so you start to refeed and put so much food into you and your stomach starts to stretch, and that discomfort was a lot physically. I was in pain daily. I knew it had to be the process. There was no way around it. I had to sit through that. But certain things to help with that discomfort. First, physically, heat packs are going to be your best friend. Just like that time of the month where we put heat packs on if we've got menstrual pain. Heat packs are amazing because in a weird way they numb it, but they also soothe it and give it warmth and give that warm feeling of being supported. So I found heat packs really helpful, especially, as I said, when the digestive system is trying to start again and you're introducing all these new foods and you're just introducing food in general. It's going to be really uncomfortable. So having that comfort from warmth was really helpful for me. And actually just laying down, lying on my back, sometimes on my side and putting the heat pack on my side. But after a meal, just laying down and distracting myself so the thoughts wouldn't be so loud. But laying down, putting the heat pack on, and then if I found the thoughts loud, I'd hold ice cubes in my hand. But also ice packs. Weirdly, the nurses at the hospital said that normally doesn't work and we don't recommend it. But for me, for some reason, ice packs worked. Maybe it was another numbing feeling, but anything that I could just put on my stomach. And if I was standing up or if I was sitting, I just felt so uncomfortable. So laying down just really helped me. There were other things that I did to help with the thoughts, where I had this power playlist that I put on every time after I finished a meal and my anxiety started to calm. I'd had my go-to power playlist, which were just like badass female songs. I was a pop person, loved pop, loved dance music, loved old classics like ABBA, In Excess. I was a bands person. I loved music and feeling the beat and feeling the sounds that went through my body. So I would have headphones on and I'd just blast my music so loud so I couldn't hear my own thoughts and I'd feel the rhythm. Sounds like I'm some artist. I'm not at all, but I'd feel the sound go through my body, and that was a distraction for me, and that really helped. Also, physically, I can't not acknowledge how medication really helped me during that time. I think if I didn't have medication, it would have been a hell of a lot harder, and I don't know if I would have been able to get through it myself. And I'm obviously not on medication now because that was a choice I decided to make. I believe in my instance, what happened with my doses of my medication was they did zonk me out, but they played a part in me getting through a pivotal part of my recovery. It was like that buffer thing that I just needed to get me to a certain point. I never really looked at medication that way. I was always the type of person where I wanted to be natural and I wanted to look after myself. I wanted to do holistic and I wanted to feel it all and do it all and not need medication. Like, I don't need that. But I think someone going through a mental health condition, in order to fully recover, sometimes we talk about, the yo-yo or people that relapse. And for me, I probably was on medication for a decent 3 to 4 years before I started weaning myself off of it. I needed it. And I'm so grateful for my psychiatrist. He is phenomenal. And he was the one that said, one day we want to wean you off this. But he was the one that kept saying, right now you do need this. And he kept managing that, and we kept having an open conversation around that. But during the thick of it, I definitely needed medication. And I needed a little bit of numbing of those voices, because there was no way I was going to fight every single day, 7 times a day on my own. And I won't talk about doses or what I was on, because that is everyone's individual journey. And every person is different. My anxiety was really high, so I was on heavier doses and quite lots of different doses. But that was the process in order to help me get through and never send me back. And that's why I wasn't on it for a year and then I just quickly got off it. I was on it for that decent chunk until it was certain that I was able to take control and I was capable of managing my eating disorder myself without it. I was on par with that. I was okay with that, because I made that commitment that when I made that choice, I truly wanted to recover. I knew that that had to be the process, and I trusted that process. So for me, yeah, medication, it knocked me out. It made me sleepy, but it helped me sleep at night. I was going through insomnia and I wasn't able to sleep, and I never say that word right. So sorry if I fucked it up. And it was helping me get through my meals. And yes, I probably looked like a zombie and zonked out, but that's what was required to save my life. And often people look at certain people that are going through mental health conditions and think, well, they just put in an institute and they're just drugged up and they just sleep all day. And I understand that, and I understand what picture that can paint. I understand probably what other people saw of me, where I was quite zonked out and just constantly fed like I was a baby, literally a baby that was just slept and ate food and just looked like she was drugged up all the time. I understand what that looks like. But if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here today. And I can be angry at that and I can be upset at that, but that saved my life. And I knew that wasn't going to be my forever. And I really wanted to touch on that, because there are so many people that say you don't need medication. And whilst I'm of an opinion now where I believe I don't want to take medication, at that point in my life, I did. And if there is a chemical imbalance for someone, that may be something that they can't control and they have to be on medication for the rest of their life. If that's what that person needs in order to survive, or in order to be of homeostasis or feel good or feel balanced or feel whole, we should not be shaming or disregarding someone for needing that. Ultimately, that's their choice and that's their journey. So medication definitely helped me, but that is something that you obviously, if you're going through it or if you're supporting someone going through it, you need to discuss with a medical team. Weaning off it was then obviously my decision that I wanted to do, because medication comes with quite a numbing feeling. I wanted to be able to feel everything. There were certain instances where I just felt like I couldn't cry. I couldn't be happy. I was so monotone that there was no extremities to my life. Everything just felt the same. And I'd had instances where someone had passed away in my life. I couldn't even cry. And I didn't want that. I wanted to feel it all. And once I made that as a goal or a challenge, I worked with my team how was I then going to wean myself off that, and what practices were I going to put in place to manage it? Because there is no point in deciding to come off your medication and not having anything in place. Because if you are someone that has gone through an eating disorder, and I know my personality, when I come off my medication and I feel it all, it's going to be fucking a lot. It's going to be extreme. And it is now. Like, I've been off my medication for, I think, 3 years now. And my life is so extreme. It is so extreme one end and so extreme the other. But before I made that decision to come off, I made sure that I had practices in place so that I could help myself in those times when it was really, really low. And those times, even when it was really, really high, because that can be intoxicating and addictive for me as well. And that can be unhealthy for myself. So do that beforehand. Before you just decide to stop taking it one day. Obviously, there are medical risks as well with just stop taking it. I had to go a couple of months where you just slowly, gradually come off it. But I am no therapist, so please don't take my advice. Go see a psychiatrist to really understand what is best for you in your situation. But my suggestion in that place is have a practical plan in place to support your personality when you come out of that. Because often we talk about, supporting your eating disorder, but at some point, my idea of recovery is you recover from your symptoms of your eating disorder, but your personality is still there. And your personality is, for me, is quite addictive, is a perfectionist personality. Everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be at an A standard. How was I going to manage that personality when it turned up in certain circumstances? And how was I going to manage the downfalls of that personality when I felt like I failed or I wasn't feeling heard? Because I knew when I was at my peak and I was feeling high, I was feeling heard, I was feeling seen, I was feeling loved, I was hitting my goals, I had a project, but that life isn't always like that. So when I didn't have a project or I wasn't motivated or if I was triggered or if I wasn't feeling heard or seen, how was I going to turn up for both of those types of me? And that was something that I had to manage for the rest of my life. So when people, I believe, talk about, it's something that you manage for the rest of your life, I believe you don't have to manage your symptoms for the rest of your life. I think you have to manage yourself, your personality for the rest of your life, and know that in those dark and low moments, she is going to be probably the first person that comes knocking because she is what you know. And she is what you know gives you instant relief. So, what you have to then find is, how am I going to create a plan where I don't turn to her and don't let her in? Because anyone that goes through an eating disorder knows if you even just open that door a little bit, she's going to jump back in, not just one day or in one moment, but she'll keep popping up. So it's, how do you just keep that door closed? But that's my idea of recovery. It could mean something else different for you, but that's what works for me. And that's what I have found I have been able to do to manage myself and my personality. There's obviously another important conversation to have about the physical effects of recovery, which is the fluid retention. This can be for anyone, but in my case, going through anorexia was really hard because physically you were putting on weight and you had this idea still that you didn't want to become overweight or put on weight or become fat. And yet you were putting on weight that wasn't being distributed. And this is what I was often told, is that when you start to refeed, refuel, is that food will sit as water fluid in your body until your body knows it's safe to distribute it, because it's holding onto it as comfort just in case we go into starvation mode again, because it knows that you might be sensitive or easily triggered or still just recovering from that. Like, you mentally might have recovered, but physically your body needs time as well. So it's allowing yourself to trust the process. And people just kept saying to me, the fluid will pass. It's not going to sit there forever. But if you relapse or if you go backwards or if you start to see, you do start to see the physical effects of yourself putting on weight, and then you decide, oh no, I'm in a bigger body now. I need to go backwards. I need to start getting on a diet. I need to start losing weight. You're prolonging that process and you're going right back to the start, and you are then going to have an even worse fluid retention, or your body may never be able to distribute that food again. I know someone that unfortunately had that instance where she started to go through recovery and she had all this fluid retention and her body was storing a lot, and she saw herself becoming in a bigger body, and she had so much fear because she saw it physically in the mirror. And for her, she was like, I need to go back on a diet. So she started once again restricting. And then she realized it was her eating disorder reaching that point where she wanted to get help again. And her body had shut down and being able to distribute that food. So now she can never be able to, and obviously I'm not saying the right medical terms because I'm no doctor, but her body just constantly holds on to that food and she is stuck with that fluid retention. I think that's where it's important to speak that your body can only do so much. It can only fight you so much. But if you continue to fight it and you continue to cause trauma, at some point it's going to give. And everybody has different lines where your body can and cannot cross, but it can't hold on for forever. And so what helped me to overcome that fluid retention, because there was a big period where it was almost 2 years where I was in a larger body that was just storing all this food underneath my skin as fluid. And that was so uncomfortable, obviously, because I had my own body image issues, but there was also discomfort there physically. But for me, I got rid of my mirrors. As soon as I kept turning up every day and seeing my body and just hating myself, hating what I looked like, I just had to get rid of the mirror. That was my biggest trigger. And I think find what is triggering you in that instance and get rid of it. Get rid of it until you know you can come back and deal with it. And this then falls into how I learned to love my body, how I learned to really fall in love with myself and who I was. And it came without me even choosing it during recovery because of this period, because I was in a larger body and I was hating myself and I didn't like myself. And I decided I was committed to my treatment and this was hindering my treatment. I decided to not focus on my body. And this is a conversation around the body positive movement that I'm probably not a fan of, is that a lot of the body image and body positive movement is all about learning to love your body, and it's taking photos of your body and it's staring at your body and telling yourself that you love yourself every day and looking at your body in the mirror. And yes, that might be helpful for some people, but for me, that body positive movement shouldn't be focused on your body because your body is not you. Your body is what hosts your soul, is what hosts your personality, is what hosts who you are. It is just the home to who you are within, just a figure. And how it's morphed and how it changes is based on obviously genetics, your lifestyle, how you move it, and how you treat it. Your body is actually in a homeostasis mode. And as I said, I'm no professional, but I'm a researcher, and I decided to research a lot about my body so I could learn to understand it. Because I judged my body so much, but I never understood what it actually gave me and what it actually does for me every day. And that was something that really helped me. Was every day I learned something new about my body. I learned about a new system, whether it was my digestive system or my immune system or the nervous system or how my mind worked. I dedicated time each day to learning something new about my body so I got to know what my body was doing for me rather than what it looked like. Because we can judge our bodies, but we do not know their stories. And to help myself and to bring more kindness to my body, I had to get to know it, not just see it. I had to get to know it. So I erased the mirrors, got rid of that idea of what I thought my body should look like. So if I couldn't see it, how could I judge it? But yeah, so I got rid of the mirrors. I taped them all up, took them out, put blankets over them. I got my family support for that. They also did not look at mirrors unless it was in their own bedrooms. There was no mirror in the house, nothing I could see that could see my reflection. So I did that, as well as I said, I committed to each day learning something new about my body. And I'm so glad I did. I mean, I loved learning. That was part of my personality. I loved learning new things and I loved gaining knowledge. And so for me, it was fun. And in really learning that, my perspective started to change, started to shift, especially when I was doing it consistently. Every day I was being reminded, and I started to see myself as this amazing formation rather than a body to be viewed and judged. Then once I was allowed to move my body, I started to do yoga. And I was never a person to do yoga. Never in my life was I going to do yoga. To me, that was not exercise. It was not movement. It wasn't hard enough. It didn't burn enough calories. It didn't do anything for me. But the amount of times that I cried doing yoga, for me, what I got from yoga, take away the exercise, take away the movement, take away the endorphins from moving my body, I was forced to hug my body. Nearly every pose. I was forced to rely on my body's strength, to rely on myself, to trust myself, and to rely on my body to hold itself. I cried so much during the first times that I tried yoga because I'd never been able to do that for myself. Never been able to sit still in something and just be there with my body and myself. Never been able to hold my body. Never been able to trust myself. And in doing yoga, it gave me so much more than I ever thought I would get from it. spiritually, mentally, and physically. And that's why I love yoga, because I'm forced to get intimate with myself. And for someone that doesn't like their body or who they are, that is really hard. It's really hard to get intimate with yourself on a physical level and say to your body, I need to trust you here. I need to let go of the reins of all control and trust you, because you're in weird positions that you need to hold for long periods of times that people think are just stretching, but they're not. They're intimate, they're tough, and they're relying on your strength and flexibility to get you through it. And that's for me where I built my mind and body connection. So I never really went on a quest to love myself or to find what that looked like. It kind of just happened during my recovery and coming out. I fell so much in love with my body because I understood it. I took away the focus of what it looked like and I got intimate with it. And through that, I learned how to build that connection. And then ultimately it rippled. I learned to dress my body the way that I actually wanted to dress. For so long, I was dressing myself in clothes that models, were in certain sizes and my friends fit into. I was trying to fit myself into sizes that weren't my size. And it just makes you feel so uncomfortable and hate your body because you're like, why don't you fit? Why does that look good on that person and not look good on me? And I started to wear things that I actually felt good in and that suited my body. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. There are some clothes that are designed or that look like they suit and look amazing on some people and don't look amazing on other people. Like, I don't think there's shame in saying that. It's just finding what you feel great in. And that ripples, because how often, and I went through this so many times, but how many times do you're about to go out with a friend or you're about to go out or you're about to go out drinking or whatever that is, and you get in something that makes you feel so uncomfortable and your night is ruined. Or just that 20 minutes before where you're deciding what to wear and nothing feels right. It all feels uncomfortable. It doesn't sit right. It's what someone suggested you wear and someone says you look great in it, but you don't feel comfortable and your whole night is ruined. But when you wear something that you feel comfortable in, where even if the size is a little bit bigger and it's not sitting, like for me, I was not a tight person. I hated things sitting on me. And I don't know if it was a comfort thing or whatnot, but I just hated it. I hated feeling restricted and like something was sitting, like tight dresses and that were just not me. And so often everyone would say, you look stunning and it just, your figure looks amazing in it. And I was like, but it's not. And I'd force myself to wear these tight dresses and I would hate it. And it would show. I would have the worst time in the world, chuck a tantrum, hate myself, and I'd feel that void come back in. But if I wore something that I was comfortable in, where it was like a flowy dress, or I'm a high-waisted person, I love shit that hugs my waistline, the bigger underwear that hugs just underneath your belly button. Like that is me. That is comfort for me. And when I wore stuff like that, I had the best night because I felt comfortable. And when you start to make decisions where comfort becomes more than wearing something to fit a trend or someone else or a certain size, you are telling your body that you're listening to it and that you love it. And so my self-love journey came through experimenting and came in ways where I just decided to commit to myself and commit to recovery. And from that, it rippled to learning how to love my body in ways that were never told, but I just found because I gave things a go. And a lot of that was, I was off social media, so I was not exposed to bikini models and people that looked certain ways and were wearing certain dresses and sizes. I eliminated myself because I made a commitment to myself, and sometimes that means you have to sacrifice the things that you think that you need. But to give myself the best chance, I knew I had to go through basically my own COVID. I isolated myself from the world until I knew I was ready. And that's important with recovery. It's not getting rid of these for forever. It's just getting rid of them until you know you're able to manage them, or that you know that you've learned that lesson. And that's where I'm at now, is I can be on social media and not be triggered. And now I can look at myself in the mirror. I don't have to have the mirrors covered up, and I don't feel that judgment or that hate, or I can exercise in different ways and not feel motivated or like I need to burn calories. I know my why, and my why is to feel good and to feel strong. And that doesn't mean that, I exercise X amount each week and I only have to exercise this and I only have to eat this or eat at this certain time, because I've done the work. I've done the work. I just understand my body so much that I'm so much more than my body. I am the person that hosts the body. I am the soul within. And that to me is greater than anything that anybody sees, that any judgment that I'm to portray. And that's ultimately how I found my voice, through all of that. Once I knew I was ready and I was stronger, but I had to do the work. And this is where it's going to lead me into next time's episode. We've touched on a lot of content on topics, and I don't want to say solutions, but just ideas and suggestions that may or could help you. And I think the biggest takeaway is just to try things. Wherever you're at now is just, you're not going to be any worse off. If you're at the lowest of lows, you may as well give something a go and try different things, and know it's going to be hard, and it's about taking risks. And what worked for me, why I didn't relapse, is I had that motivator all along that I was going to commit to recovery and commit to myself. And little did I know, in doing that, I researched, I found ways, I learned how to do things, and I just gave things a go. And yeah, I failed, and yeah, it didn't always go to plan, and every day was not perfect, or I didn't feel great every day. Most days I felt uncomfortable and hated it. But I was doing all the work now so my future self could be set up. I was doing all the work back then so I could be in right now where I am. And that's not to say that I don't have bad days today, or there's days I still feel like I'm struggling. But I set myself up so I could be in a position where I could manage myself now, that I could turn up for myself now through all my different colors, through all my different messy on my own, and know I will be okay because I have done the work previously. And so you might be in the stage where it feels really hard, but this is a stage where you set the foundations, where you do the work. And it's not for seeing the result now. It's so your future self can thank yourself, because I thank that self every single day for committing to recovery and doing the work. Because if I never did that work, I would not be in the position I am today, where I found myself, where I found my voice, where I completely, unconditionally love my body, love who I am, know who I am, and can attract the right people in my life and know what is right and what is wrong for me, where I can accept myself fully, not feel shame, not feel guilt, not feel judged, and know that I can turn up in every situation knowing I have myself and I will be okay. That's the work done of myself that was struggling through recovery. She was struggling every fucking day, but she kept turning up and she kept doing the work and she kept trying new things and she kept failing and failing successfully. But through every single failure and lesson, she did the work so I could be right here today. And if that's where you're at, keep at it, not for now, not for tomorrow, not for the next week, but so your future self can be set up. And that is my biggest takeaway from recovery, is you're not going to see the measurable results now. You're just going to see it later. And you might have a moment. It wasn't a pinpoint moment for me, but it was just all the little things that I did every day to commit to recovery so that I could be the best version I can be now. So thank you so much for listening. Next time's episode, I'm going to talk a lot about finding my voice through all of that, and how I decided to then come out after I went through my isolation, after I did the work and removed myself from society and really worked on myself, what that looked like coming back out into society, how I found my voice, how we founded The Secret Burden, and where that led to us starting the conversation in the eating disorder and mental health space today. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Her series of the Secret Sunday session, and I will catch you guys all next time.